everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's LinkedIn Live. I'm Jasmine Ward, the Vice President of Strategy and Operations at Tech United. I am super excited for today's guest, who is not only an expert, but generally just a ray of light and someone who I've gotten to know throughout my career at Tech United to be an awesome supporter and a huge resource to growing tech companies. Really excited for Eva Novak to be joining me today. Eva, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Of course. So today we're going to be talking about how to leverage LinkedIn, how your profile could be hurting your chances of getting an interview, how employers and agencies can be better leveraging LinkedIn as a tool, all those things in between that you as a senior consultant really kind of get, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So for those that are unfamiliar with you and with Orvis, could you tell us a little bit more about your firm and your role there?
Yeah, so at Orvis, we are a professional consulting firm. So we specifically focus in technology roles across different industries in full-time placements and contract talent as well in different tech roles. So I focus specifically on our data and machine learning roles. So that involves data engineering, data science, analysis, and different machine learning functions as well.
Very cool. Okay. So I saw you do an awesome TikTok about this topic, and that's why I asked you to come on and tell the Tech United community a little bit more about it. You're so knowledgeable, and you are really on the front lines of especially what's going on in the tech industry right now. Everyone has a LinkedIn profile, almost everyone, right? So what can candidates do to maximize their profile to get that first interview?
Yeah, well, so through the eyes of a recruiter, we use a platform on LinkedIn called LinkedIn Recruiter, which I will say over the past few years has become predominantly one of the biggest recruiting platforms out there. I've worked for a couple different companies, and that is the main platform that's used. There is other ones. So it's definitely really important to have a pretty solid LinkedIn profile because it's kind of become your social resume. So one of the things that I find most important are making sure your skills are listed correctly in terms of the jobs that you've had. So when you put a new job in on LinkedIn, you have an option to do a little write-up of, you could put projects that you worked on, the team that you were on, what the company itself did. And I find it's very great to always have a couple bullet points there of a couple projects that you've worked on with certain, in my field, certain technologies that you use. And then there is a new function for the skill sets as well, that when you add a skill set at the bottom of the page, you could actually link it to certain jobs that you worked at.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. And then otherwise, I find profile pictures very important. And I'm a little bit different. Everyone will always say you need a super professional profile picture, but I kind of enjoy people that have profile pictures that show a bit of their personality, or they're in front of a pretty background. You don't need to be in front of just a plain background. But I do sometimes find if someone doesn't have a profile picture, it's not always the best if they don't have one. So just make sure your profile picture stands out. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be a professional. Mine has no company branding on it now, but before, without the branding, I was sitting at a bar.
When you get the good light, that's just the time to take that new
Exactly.
LinkedIn profile pic.
Exactly. Yeah, I was at a restaurant and I was smiling. I was having fun. So I love profile pictures like that. It definitely shows a bit about your personality as well. So something else I've actually been coming across quite often too, in regards to LinkedIn profiles, are people don't necessarily have their location set to the correct place. So as a recruiter, I can, with my search, I do a search, it's called a Boolean search with different skill sets. So that's why the skill sets are so important. But then I can also filter through geographical locations. So I've reached out to some candidates saying oh, here's a job in New York, and they're no longer located in New York, but their profile they are. So that could prevent the correct people reaching out to you.
Sure.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I would say is definitely the open to work function. So there's so there's two separate settings that you could do for it. So you could do open to work, where it's private, that just people that have the recruiter platform see, which this is great to do when, say, you're looking to leave a job and you don't want your employer to see that you're necessarily open to work. And it does have a function in it that it should prevent people from your company seeing, if they do have a recruiter license, seeing that you are open to
Sure.
work. It's obviously not
Okay.
bulletproof, but it should
Yeah.
protect you to an
Okay.
extent that they're not going to see that. Or
Is
there
this
is
a function that anyone can have, or is this like a premium LinkedIn function? I know
it's
LinkedIn recent has like a lot of different kind of membership tiers now.
Yeah, so it's a premium LinkedIn function. So you would
Okay.
buy a license for Recruiter, and depending on the license, you get a certain extent of in-mail. So when I send out a message to someone on Recruiter, it goes through as an in-mail, and people have the option to accept or decline the message.
Okay.
Yep.
So you brought up a couple things I just want to dig into a little bit
Mhm.
further. So you mentioned like the skills in the profile and how you can like tie them now, and it's something that it seems like a really robust opportunity for candidates. Is there kind of like the limit that you would say like that makes a lot of sense for someone? Like, I
Yeah.
find especially people younger in their careers, which unfortunately are a lot of the people that were most recently impacted
Mhm.
by some of the tech layoffs, tend to like list absolutely everything they've ever
Yeah.
done, right? Like in this system, when you're leveraging the tech, like is that helpful, or is it better to spotlight just very specific examples that like would make sense or that they should look to match like the job descriptions that they're applying to?
Yeah, well, so it would be hard to like match the LinkedIn profile to specific job descriptions, since it is a public profile. So my
Yeah,
suggestion would be leverage it in a way. Say that someone is coding with a programming tool called Python, and they like
sure.
Python and they want jobs within Python.
Hmm.
Making sure that they're listing those projects that they worked on,
Got it.
but they don't have to include every single thing that they did, because we have to remember LinkedIn is also a mobile-friendly site, so you don't want your
Right.
profile to be too overcrowded.
Makes sense. Okay. Very cool. Beyond the profile, obviously a lot of people have connections on LinkedIn. How do you recommend candidates leverage their LinkedIn network for opportunities?
So definitely building out the network is very important. And a great way to do that is to connect with people in the space that you're interested in being in. So connecting with people, if you're a data engineer, connecting with people that are data engineers at maybe companies that you're interested in or certain industries that you're interested in, as well as a really good way for opportunities to get jobs is say you see someone in your network landed a new job that an awesome company, in the same type of team or environment that you want to be in, reaching out to them, saying congratulations, like really awesome you land that job, this and that, and then ask, like, if you don't mind me asking, like, how did you land it? That is a really
Yeah.
good way to get introductions to hiring managers, recruiters. I have a couple candidates that I've worked with that refer me to people that have reached out to them about, like, okay, I see you're at this job now. Like,
Sure.
how can I get into the same type of field?
Very cool. Is there like a good template or a good way of doing it if you maybe don't know the person? Like say, you're looking at a really awesome data scientist job at a company and you want to reach out to another data scientist to say, hey, you're in a position I would love to be in. I saw the company was hiring for the same role.
Mhm.
Maybe your team is growing. Like, is that something that you see people do, or is it more friendly or like hey, I know someone who might be on the team who grew, or is like reaching out to the recruiter? Like, can you do any of those? Is it sort of like what makes the most sense for what the position is?
Yeah, I would say it's like more of what you're comfortable doing. I
Yeah.
do always find there's a lot of success in being like, hey, I saw you into this great role. People love to
Yeah.
talk about their successes,
Sure. Yeah.
and themselves. So really just being like, I'd love to like pick your brain and like, how did you figure out how you did this? So
Yeah.
definitely just kind of leveraging the good fortune they've had.
Okay. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially in this market where people are like constantly sort of jumping around. Like there's an opportunity there to kind of like, that's a real tool to use.
Yeah.
Um, I think that that is super relevant if you're like in that career, right? Like especially in today's day and age, there are a lot of people that are like reskilling or they're going back to coding boot camps and they're jumping into the tech and world,
Mhm.
especially in terms of like coding things like Java, Python, whatever it might be. If you're new, like say you were working in a completely different industry and you're looking
Yeah.
to get into the tech industry, are there other ways that they can look to sort of get into that network?
Well, so outside of LinkedIn, something I would suggest doing is definitely attending networking events.
Sure.
really, really great opportunity. I actually had met someone at an event last week in the city. I believe he's actually watching this today. And he's in that position where he's making a
Sure.
jump into a coding boot camp. So he went to these events to meet people, leverage the network, and really see where he could find opportunity. Because those face-to-face connections definitely go a long way.
Sure. Do you find that those types of people are also the kind of people that might reach out to you to say, like, look, I'm making a move into this industry, and like you're obviously super embedded into that? Like, is that how you typically people will kind of come to you, or you find it's more through like meeting people in person, like this person you met last week?
Yeah, so I've actually gotten introduced to a lot of people over the past few months that are looking to make a change into the tech industry. So
Sure.
with what I specifically do, it's not always necessarily easy to place someone that's new to the tech industry just because I work on more
Sure.
senior level roles.
Yeah.
But I am always more than happy. I've taken calls with quite a few people to just give them advice and talk them through. Listen, this is steps you could take to get into the industry.
Yeah.
This is how
Very
you
cool.
want to network. So very similar to the conversation we're having. I've definitely had those personal conversations, and I've offered myself as a resource as well.
Awesome. By the way, he is watching.
He is here.
Hi,
Hey,
Daniel.
Danielle.
Love that. Big fans of Eva's over here. Well, that's awesome. That's super helpful. People that are a little more established in their career then typically have some great experience to go off of. On the flip side, are there some common red flags that you see on profiles or resumes that you like always avoid?
Yeah, so something that's really big for me. So there's a lot of profiles out there that are fake. I've
Wow.
actually last week was messaging with someone who I could tell was a bot. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so one of the big things I really won't reach out to anyone that their profile's written in third person. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, it's actually there's quite a few of them out there. So that generally means to me that someone else is running the profile and not it could be a real person themselves, but they aren't running their own profile.
Wow.
I do tend to avoid profiles like that. And then I also do avoid profiles that their profile picture is something like not, even if it's not even saying not having a picture, their profile picture is some sort of logo or object. And it's just something very odd that just looks like it doesn't make sense. I do find that to be a red flag as well. And then something else I do pay attention to is thoroughness throughout the profile. So spelling, like I've seen people that have their job title spelled wrong. And to me, that's a big red flag because that's how you're representing yourself to future
Sure.
employees. So
Yeah,
making sure that,
absolutely.
and then that their background makes sense as well, that it's just kind of not random things, just all over the place. And then I wouldn't necessarily say this is a red flag where I wouldn't reach out to anyone, but a tip as well, especially for people who are more junior in the industry. I see a lot of people that only have a couple years experience. They have jobs listed that aren't really relevant to what they're looking to do. So they'll have jobs that they did in high school or like serving and bartending jobs throughout college. And
Sure.
that's just something that's just going to clutter up your LinkedIn.
Sure. Is that one of those things where it's like, after a year or two, when you land your first gig, like you can kind of take those off? Like, you want them on while you create your profile and you're like
Yeah.
maybe still in school. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Do
so when
you?
I was in college, I still
Yeah.
had because I had sales job like retail
Yeah.
sales jobs in high
Right.
school and college. So I had those
Yeah.
listed. But then once after I
Yeah.
landed my first job and had
Yeah.
actual working experience, I was like, all right, I could take these off now.
I think that's a great point. You can always do, I think, like extracurriculars. So you could say maybe like that show that you worked and that you were engaged during your college or high school years, right?
Yeah.
As if you still want to keep on that you're like a hard worker, you've been working,
Mhm.
but it's not worth putting on like the professional list. I think that's super valuable advice. I have a question about years. I know that a lot of people, after they get a little further on in their career, will take the year they graduated off of their LinkedIn. Is this like a non-issue, a red flag? Like, what do you kind of think about this? I'm very curious.
So my personal opinion, I don't necessarily, especially for more senior people, I'm not necessarily looking at the year they graduated unless I'm
Sure.
trying to really gauge the amount of experience that they've had.
Right.
The reason why a lot of people do it as they get further on in their careers is because of age, that they don't
Yeah.
want to feel like they're going to be missing out on opportunities because people are going to be able to figure out their age from the year that they graduated.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Very, very interesting. Yeah, I find especially in tech, like people get their start so young.
Mhm.
So the kind of age you graduate and some of that stuff is like less relevant because you could have like a bunch of years of work under your experience. You could have coded a whole website and like
Ah,
sold it, right? Like could have made
yes.
6 apps before you were 18. So I find it to be like a little less relevant in this industry, but I was super curious to hear your thoughts. Um, on the flip side of red flags, are there any profile or resume line items or notes that like you automatically are like, this person is it?
Yeah, I've gotten that quite a bit with profiles recently, and especially people that I did end up placing. It just kind of goes into the things that I've mentioned that people should have on their LinkedIn profile.
Right.
They're just very, very thorough. There's
Yeah.
a very clear read to me of what they're looking for, like what they've done, and just show that they're kind of passionate about the field that they're in. Those are generally the people that I love to place because I want to help people get jobs. That's my whole career. So when I'm working with
Right.
someone, I could tell from their profile just how passionate they are about being in the industry. It really goes a long way, and especially where your summary is. I don't have a great summary on my LinkedIn, I will admit that. But I feel like when you are in a development, technology type of industry, having that summary to really show like projects that you've worked on and what you want to do and industries that you like to be in, that's always super helpful.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Also, in like this lucky day and age, if you're especially a developer, you just like put your current summary into Chat GPT, you say, make this good for LinkedIn. 4 seconds later, you got a stellar
You have
summary, you're good
everything.
to go. It's just the New York Times award winning and you're set.
ChatGPT went to law school. It could do anything.
Yeah, like you're good. Folks in
It
the
was
tech
funny.
world, Chat GPT your summaries.
I was sending out something the other day and I just like couldn't think of the words to make it sound really professional. And I put like two incomplete sentences into chat GDP and it wrote out the whole email for me.
It's amazing. My
Yeah.
sister and her fiance are getting married and they Chat GPT their like about us love story to make it more romantic.
That is amazing.
It's the most like they both work in tech. It's like the most nerdy tech thing they could do. It's so on brand.
That is so cool. That's a good idea. I'm gonna tell my friends getting married that.
Yeah. It's like why waste time when you could just have a
Have a
bot
robot.
do it? Oh, I love it. So last question, because I know we have to wrap up in a couple of minutes, is on the agency side, how can agencies better use LinkedIn to best serve their clients and their clients' needs?
Yeah, most definitely. I feel like learning really how to do, as I mentioned before, the Boolean searches that we use, learning how to do a really good Boolean search, because the
Yeah,
LinkedIn sourcing can be very, very time consuming. There are certain searches I could do that I'm going to get 2,000 results. So it's really learning how
use.
to create that niche Boolean search. That you're not going to be disqualifying people who could be a fit for a job, but
Sure.
that you're not sorting through 2,000 different profiles to find the right fit.
Right.
So really learning how to do that well. So how I usually operate is I'll do a very niche search to begin with a lot of the top skill sets
Yeah.
to really find those profiles. And then as I go through those lists, I start to take some of maybe the less necessary skill sets that people may not have listed to go
Yeah.
through other rounds of people. But I always do that really niche search first, which is why I say having those skill sets on your profile is so important. And then really understanding your client's needs, understanding like why the role is open,
Right.
what their top three skill sets look that they're looking for are. So when you are talking to people, you do have that relevant information to point out the correct profiles. And then
Makes sense.
with hiring managers as well. So a lot of companies do have like internal talent teams, which we partner with talent teams quite often to help them source candidates. But
Very
we
cool.
do take some of that pain point out of it where we source the candidates and we do an initial phone screen. So by the time that it's either getting to the talent acquisition team or the hiring manager, the person we already know they have the skill set, so they're not doing that phone screen themselves. So I'm not wasting my time, but I'm spending the time doing all these
Right.
phone screens, screening the people to make sure that they're a fit, so they don't have to do that. Because phones, I mean, I'll probably talk to, I mean, at least like 3 to 5 people a day,
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
more, depending on like what types of roles I have.
Yeah. I think that that's honestly like something people undervalue when they partner with a firm, because that opportunity to like align on top skills, like major needs, major pain
Mhm.
points, and then have someone else who's done it way more times than you have to do the phone screening to really like pick out the right people. Like we've at Tech United done it both ways, and I can absolutely say that working with a recruiting firm has like been so much more helpful. They like know what to look for. You've got an outside person who's really got like their skill set. So I love to hear that. I think that's super, super valuable. And you kind of get to act as like an auxiliary member of their team, just helping to champion these deals and kind of get these new recruits in faster than they could probably do on their own.
Most definitely. And I mean, I've spent, especially since I've been specializing in data and machine learning, I've spent so much of my time building out a network in that space, that
For
I can get
sure.
candidates turned over within a few days, depending on the job function and like how niche the skill
Amazing.
sets are.
Wow.
That where if say it's a hiring manager who with a hiring manager, their only
Sure.
priority is not hiring. They have an actual job and a team to run as well.
Yeah.
They may not have that time to learn how to
Yeah.
use LinkedIn Recruiter and do the searches and do the phone screens themselves.
For
So it
sure.
definitely takes out a lot of that pain working with someone who is
Yeah.
in the industry themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to let you go, but the last question I have is like, what is the most kind of surprising thing you've learned throughout your career?
It's definitely just a lot of the personal development you get from being in this type of industry. I talk to so many people since I do both the recruiting and the sales end of it. So the amount of people that I've met throughout my career has been amazing. I've been
For
fortunate to
sure.
have some really great mentors, whether that be people that I worked with directly or people that were clients, and just
Yeah.
building the relationships as well. It's really shown me
Yeah.
how far building relationships can go. Obviously,
That's
I met you
awesome.
guys at Tech United, and it's a relationship that we've maintained till today. So it's just how far the relationships can take you,
Yeah.
and leveraging those relationships, but then also learning how to maintain them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fantastic. What a great note to end on. Eva, thank you so much for joining us today. If people want to learn more and get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do so?
Reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. I have my
Perfect.
profile open, so anyone can really message me. But then obviously you can shoot me over connection requests as well.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I'm going to give you our signature high five, and I hope everyone really enjoyed today's episode. All right. Three, two, one. High five your camera, girl.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.